Certain places call to us. When we go there, we feel at ease, as if we've arrived at a long-sought-for port. For many people, Italy is one of those places. It's been a magnet for travelers and pilgrims for 1,000 years. Here, the beauty and craftsmanship of other times still exist. Renaissance art holds a particular fascination, and many people love it. But not that many know about the philosophy that inspired it. During the Renaissance, artists broke from dogma and returned to the study of the past. They studied the wisdom of ancient esoteric traditions that said love and beauty could be a route to divine insights. They wanted to act as a conduit for the all-originating source they believed in, to bring an immaterial substance into form. When I see the art and architecture of the Renaissance, still very much alive in Italy today, and when I read the words of the men and women who lived at the time, I can sense the presence of the writers and artists themselves. The energy of their thoughts and creation still reverberates, and I feel myself surrounded by the same spirit that infused their lives. I find myself in a transformed world, one in which nature, art, and the written word all partake of a common essence, the anima mundi Renaissance philosophers spoke of, the soul of the world. For Renaissance philosophers, the anima mundi, the soul of the world, was inseparable from the things of the world. The divine cosmos was said to be a living, vibrating being, with everything created according to common principles, as above, so below. Our modern world is basically a secular one. Many people believe that it's possible to know and explain everything scientifically, using only material things. And some have seen the Renaissance as a time when these modern ideas about the nature of reality began, when people started to let go of a religious or spiritual explanation for things. And while it's true that during the Renaissance the scientific method started to be used, it was also a time when science and imagination went hand in hand. During the Renaissance, philosophy, science, and religion remained intertwined. The universe was seen as a creature of which all were a part, but Renaissance philosophers also believed that the fundamental truths of the universe were based on mathematical principles. The tradition, begun by Greek philosopher Pythagoras and his followers in the 6th century BC, held that everything in the universe was related to numbers and that they were the ultimate reality. Leonardo's drawing, The Vitruvian Man, is named for the Roman architect Vitruvius, who based his designs on the proportions of the ideal body. In the tradition of Pythagoras, the circle represents the spiritual world and the square the material one. We can also say the circle is a symbol of the psyche, while the square and rectangle are symbols of earthbound matter, the body. The squared circle, then, is a symbol of wholeness and of integration. During the Renaissance, there was an interest in individual spirituality, in direct communication with the divine. Beginning in the 13th century, Franciscan teachings had been making people aware of the spiritual qualities of nature, and later on, looking back to ideas found in Plato, Renaissance philosophers felt that through a discovery of the joys in earthly beauty, an awareness of divinity could be found. Writers and artists of the Renaissance looked back to ancient Greece and Rome, and for the first time since antiquity began using mythological figures in their works. Although nature was already said to be in a state of perfection, it could still be used as the artist's material. Renaissance designers were inspired by Greek writings on Arcadia, a mythical garden of bliss and perfection, and also wanted to create a mythical, magical world. They looked back to the Greek models of harmony, proportion, and order, but developed their own unique ways of incorporating these ideals in their work. Venus is the goddess of love, peace, and beauty, and the Renaissance was a time when a new kind of beauty was born into the world. Botticelli wanted to create an ideal kind of beauty, unlike anything that could be found on earth. On the left is Zephyr, god of the wind, and a nymph named Chloris. They're blowing Venus ashore. All around them are roses, which are said to have come into being with Venus's birth. Venus was conceived when the Titan god Cronus castrated his father Uranus, god of the sky, at the request of his mother Gaia, Mother Earth. Gaia was in pain as Uranus had buried her children deep within the earth. This sacrifice fertilized the sea, creating the foam from which Venus was born. In this way she unites heaven and earth, body and soul. Italian Renaissance philosophers placed a high value on beauty. They saw our world as an imperfect reflection of an eternal world of perfect and changeless beauty. It was thought that through art they could approach that world, touch its essence. Italian Renaissance philosophy blossomed from two lines of influence, humanism and Neoplatonism. Humanism grew out of the recovery of Latin texts from the time of the Roman civilization. Renaissance scholars found that classical literature could act as a guide for earthly life, and that language could be used to express the individual's experience. Humanists wanted to seek truth by study and reflection, and believed in the ability of humans to elevate themselves through knowledge. Florence was the cradle of humanism and the Renaissance. Humanism eventually developed into civic humanism, which focused on building wealth and patronizing the arts. Florentines treated their city as a work of art and as a visible representation of their community. Instead of giving money to monasteries or for masses, now wealthy citizens contributed to public buildings for beauty and for the usefulness of the city, and to establish public secular institutions. Then, in the mid-15th century, humanists turned to a more mystical way of thinking. Although some works by Plato had been known in Europe before the Renaissance, it was for the most part Aristotle, seen here on the right, with his naturalistic approach based on the powers of observation, who was studied. Plato, on the other hand, spoke of a divine world of forms, of which this level of reality is merely a reflection. Platonism, or Neoplatonism, as we call it today, was based on the works of Plato and those who followed him. Plato's teachings were further expanded in Alexandria, Egypt, in the 3rd century AD, which was a melting pot of different cultures and religions, and Neoplatonism contains many influences. Over the centuries leading up to the Renaissance, Platonic texts were preserved in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Turks, and many scholars arrived in Italy, bringing their knowledge with them. Neoplatonism speaks of a single source from which all existence emanates and with which an individual soul can be mystically united. In Neoplatonic thought, the universe exists in levels, and the highest level is called the One, or the Good. The essence of the One can be felt through the anima mundi, the world soul, which is present here on earth, moving in and through everything. No attributes can be assigned to the One, they said. We can only identify it with the good and the principle of beauty. The idea of Neoplatonism is to return to where we have come from, to regain a lost sense of oneness we once had. How do we do this? The famous Neoplatonist Plotinus said, "Follow beauty, since the One is the source of all beauty. Beauty is the genuine reality," he said. Michelangelo, like Botticelli, wanted to create a kind of ideal beauty, not like anything that could be found in this world. For Michelangelo, the human body was a reflection of the divine, but also the inner self of a human being. He felt the artist's function was to bring pre-existent forms out of the material at hand, and he sculpted by carving away the marble surrounding the figure, which he envisioned trapped inside. He believed that the artist was like God. God implanted beauty in the physical world, and the artist tries to create or uncover the beauty in matter. Renaissance philosophy said that it was necessary to suspend logical thinking, embrace mystery, and abandon oneself to eros, to achieve a unity of perception, in order to transcend the duality of the world, to return to the One spoken of in Neoplatonic philosophy. Mars and Venus were a popular subject for artists during the Renaissance. Mars, god of war, is enamored of Venus, who, although she's goddess of concord, loves strife. Each shares in the temperament of the other, and there is a balancing of cosmic energies. Legend had it that Venus and Mars, through this union of opposites, produced a daughter named Harmony. In this image, Mars is disarmed, his sword and helmet lying by his side, and it was believed that cosmic love, Venus, always will be able to pacify the violent material universe, Mars. Renaissance philosophy saw love as a cosmic force, always present from the beginning of creation, in fact, the source of all creation. Here Zephyr, god of the winds, as a divine force of creation, is entering the garden of Venus. He's pursuing a nymph, Chloris. Flowers stream from her mouth. She's being transformed into Flora, flower goddess of spring, eternal bearer of life, and the embodiment of beauty in the physical world. In the center, Venus is the mediating force. On the left are the three graces intertwined: beauty, passion or pleasure, and chastity or restraint. Amor is aiming his arrow at the grace in the center, restraint, who is seen from the back. Her gaze is directed at Mercury, messenger of the gods, protector of the garden. Chastity unites and transcends beauty and passion by following Mercury. He has his feet firmly planted in this beautiful earthly garden, yet he's pointing beyond the garden. So while love is desire aroused by beauty, this love can never be satisfied by earthly things alone. It was said that only by facing the beyond can beauty and pleasure find a balance. Only by restraint or by tempering our earthly desires can we find true joy. Plato suggests that the reason we love beauty so much is that it makes us remember our former life in an eternal dimension. In Plato's Symposium, there's a description of a metaphorical ladder on which the seeker climbs from the initial step of appreciating one earthly body or creation to gaining the capacity to see the beauty in everybody, then to perceiving the invisible beauty of the mind and soul. This ever-increasing awareness is said to lead to the perception and understanding of the hidden beauty of the world, that which lies beyond the five senses. According to myth, the god Bacchus rescued Ariadne from the Greek island of Naxos, where she had been abandoned. They married and enjoyed a perfect union. When she died, he placed her crown with the stars. It's now known as the Corona Borealis. Renaissance poet Pietro Bembo wrote, "Virtuous love is not merely desire of beauty, but desire of true beauty, which is not of that human and mortal kind which fades, but is immortal and divine."